Imagine getting a bill in the mail tomorrow, and it's literally a tax on the air you breathed yesterday.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just for breathing.
Right. I'm not talking about like a pollution fine or a carbon offset or whatever. I mean the physical act of inhaling and
Yeah.
exhaling.
They're charging you for oxygen.
Exactly. The government claims the air contains, a trace amount of magical energy. And because you accidentally breathed it in while walking to work, boom, you owe them half your annual salary.
That's just terrifying.
It is. And now imagine that the government enforcing this ridiculous tax isn't just, guys in suits with briefcases. It's a highly organized cult of magical martial artists.
Right, guys who can literally punch through solid stone.
Yeah, or shatter your spine from 20 feet away just by looking at you funny. So, welcome to the terrifying, highly bureaucratic, and deeply unfair world we are jumping into today for this deep dive.
I love this premise so much because it instantly, it just shatters our usual expectations for fantasy.
Oh, completely.
We're so conditioned to think of magical worlds as these, like, elegant, poetic landscapes, right?
Yeah, like the chosen one with the glowing sword.
Exactly. You picture pristine lakes or a prophecy written in the stars that guarantees the hero will win just because, they have secret royal blood.
Yeah, the whole chosen one trope.
But the sources we're looking at today present a magical landscape that operates way more like a corrupt, predatory corporation.
Which is so much more relatable, honestly. And we're pulling from a very specific set of documents for this deep dive. We have the first 12 chapters of a serialized cultivation web fiction called The Path of Embers.
Yeah, and it is a wild ride.
It really is. We're going to examine the brutal, gritty, and just incredibly stubborn rise of this supposedly powerless mortal named Lu Jin. But before we get into, the details of who Jin is, what exactly is our mission for today? What are we trying to figure out from this stack of chapters?
Well, the primary goal today is to unpack the mechanics of survival in a completely rigged system.
Okay, a rig system.
Right. We're going to explore how a marginalized laborer, someone who is positioned at the absolute rock bottom of this magical hierarchy, how he manages to dismantle a corrupt power structure.
And he doesn't do it with, magic wand.
No, he doesn't suddenly discover a hidden magical gift at all. He does it through systemic loopholes, sheer biological stubbornness, and honestly, a little bit of frustrated cosmic intervention.
I love that frustrated cosmic intervention.
All right, we need to dissect the unique physical laws of this universe, understand how bureaucracy is basically weaponized to crush the lower classes, and look at what happens when the people who are treated like dirt decide to rediscover their own erased history.
That sounds absolutely incredible. And to you, listening right now, I want to make a promise right up front. Even if you don't typically read martial arts fantasy or, you have no idea what a cultivation novel even is.
Or if you just don't care about magical flying swords.
Right, exactly. Do not tune out because the core themes we are unpacking today are universally relatable.
Oh, completely.
We are talking about fighting a system that is structurally designed to make you fail. We're talking about dealing with terrible, cowardly bosses who take credit for your, agonizing hard work.
We all know a boss like that.
Oh, for sure. And most importantly, we are looking at how a person can take the deepest, most unfair traumas inflicted on them and physically forge them into an indestructible strength. So where do we actually begin to understand this rigged system?
Well, to understand the system, we have to start at the absolute bottom. We begin literally in the dirt of a training courtyard at an outpost of the Iron Fist sect.
The Iron Fist sect, okay.
Yeah, and the text throws us immediately into the meat grinder in Chapter 1. We're introduced to Lu Jin. He's an 18-year-old outer disciple.
An outer disciple means basically nothing, right?
Right, exactly. In the strict, rigid hierarchy of this sect, an outer disciple is essentially glorified manual labor. They aren't there to learn the profound mysteries of the universe.
They're sweeping floors.
Sweeping courtyards, carrying luggage, and in Jin's case, he serves a much darker purpose.
Oh.
When we meet him, he is functioning as a literal, living punching bag for a man named Senior Disciple Zhao.
Man, I read the description of Zhao, and he instantly gave me the chills.
No, he's the worst.
Mostly because he feels so real. He isn't a Dark Lord sitting on a throne of skulls. He's like a middle manager.
Yes, A magical middleman.
He wears these pristine, spotless white silk robes. And the text points out that he's a core disciple on paper, which implies he's supposed to be part of the elite warrior class.
Supposed to be, yeah.
But the way he behaves toward Jin, it doesn't feel like a martial arts master training a student. It feels like a bully just getting his kicks.
That is an incredibly accurate read on his psychology, honestly. Zhao is a fascinating villain because his evil is just so mundane.
Mundane evil is the scariest kind.
It really is. He bought his way into his position through wealth and family connections, not through merit, not through grit. He doesn't possess the actual courage of a warrior.
So he just takes it out on the kid.
Right. To alleviate his own insecurities and to refine his volatile energy without putting himself in any actual danger, he uses Jin for target practice.
And he's hitting him with, what was it called?
He's hitting this teenager with massive glowing palm strikes. The text describes it as Earth Ki, so it's a heavy, bone-crushing, localized gravity that he just slams into Jin's chest.
Okay, let me stop you right there because the mechanics of this are wild to me.
Yeah, it's intense.
If a magical martial artist is hitting a normal teenager with localized gravity, how is Jin not dead on the first page?
It's a miracle he standed.
Seriously.
Yeah.
The text mentions that his forearms are a patchwork of bruises, his chest is caved in, he's coughing up blood. But standard magic in this universe, what they call cultivation, relies on energy flowing smoothly through internal channels called meridians, right?
Correct. The foundational rule of this world's magic system is the meridian network.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Think of meridians as a delicate, internal circulatory system for spiritual energy, like a network of fine glass pipes running alongside your blood vessels.
Glass pipes, okay.
Yeah. So when a normal cultivator gets hit with magical energy, their meridians catch the force and channel it away, diffusing the impact.
But the text explicitly states that Zhao's months of beatings have completely pulverized Jin's meridians.
Completely destroyed them.
They are described as a shattered vase held together by cobwebs, so he has no functional glass pipes left.
Right.
So if he can't channel the force away, where does all that Earth Ki go? Why hasn't his skeleton just, turned to dust?
This is where we see the first brilliant mechanical twist in the world building. Because Jin has no functional meridians to safely channel the kinetic energy away, the brute force of Zhao's beatings gets trapped.
Trapped where?
Inside his skeletal structure. When Zhao hits him, Jin's bones suffer microfractures, tiny microscopic cracks all along his ribs and arms.
Oh, that sounds so painful.
But here is the paradox in those microscopic cracks. The stray, discarded spiritual energy from Zhao's attacks gets wedged in.
So the magic gets stuck in the cracks in his bones.
Exactly. It acts like a magical mortar. As Jin's body desperately tries to heal overnight, the bones heal back around that trapped energy.
Wait, so they get stronger?
Yes, they become denser, harder. It's akin to a piece of cheap ironwood being repeatedly heated and hammered on a blacksmith's anvil.
Okay, let's unpack this with a modern analogy. It is like a corporate boss giving you all the absolute worst grunt work.
Oh, I like this.
Right. They bury you in the most miserable, soul-crushing spreadsheets, force you to take all the angry client calls, make you stay late every night purely to make you quit so they can, hire their nephew.
Yep, classic nepotism move.
But by putting you through that agonizing crucible, they accidentally turn you into the only person in the entire building who actually knows how the company runs.
That is a perfect analogy.
So Zhao is trying to break Jin to feed his own ego, but by doing so, is it fair to say Zhao is inadvertently creating his own worst nightmare?
It is entirely fair. In his sheer arrogance, Zhao views Jin as an object, a sponge to absorb his excess energy. He completely fails to realize that he is inadvertently putting Jin through an ancient, brutal method of physical conditioning.
That Zhao is the hammer.
Zhao is acting as the blind hammer, and Jin's skeleton is the iron.
Wow. Which sets the stage perfectly for the inciting incident, because right in the middle of one of these horrific beating sessions, the outpost's warning bell rings.
Things go from bad to worse really fast.
Yeah, the Eastern Pass, which is a narrow canyon nearby, has been breached. The text describes a horde of iron-fanged direwolves, massive magical beasts flooding through the valley. This is a real threat.
A massive threat.
So what does our pristine aristocratic warrior Zhao do when faced with actual danger?
Oh, all of his supposed elite training evaporates immediately. He panics.
He totally choked.
He does. Zhao knows, deep down, he is not built for a life-or-death struggle.
Yeah.
So, under the cowardly guise of, quote, protecting the retreat of his superiors, he issues a direct suicidal order to Jin.
Which is just vile.
It's so vile. He hands this battered, exhausted teenager a standard-issue iron spear and tells him to go to the narrow bottleneck of the canyon. Jin is ordered to hold off the entire magical wolf horde alone, just so Zhao and the inner disciples can evacuate the outpost in their luxury carriages.
It's a blatant death sentence. There is no ambiguity about it. Jin is an 18-year-old kid who can barely stand up straight.
Literally coughing up blood 10 minutes ago.
Exactly. I was reading this thinking, why doesn't Jin just turn around and run into the woods? Let Zhao get eaten.
I think we were all yelling that at the page.
Right, but the text explains his reasoning, and it is just heartbreaking. Jin looks past Zhao and sees the outer barracks.
Yeah, the other jerk.
He sees the non-combat servants, the cooks, the younger kids who were drafted from his own home village. If he runs, the wolves will hit the barracks before the evacuation is complete, and all those kids die.
He can't let that happen.
So, swallowing his hatred for Zhao, Jin takes the spear and walks to the canyon.
The subsequent canyon fight is it's the masterclass in desperate, unglamorous survival. We have to remember, Jin does not have the magical energy to pull off a grand martial arts technique.
No fireballs for him.
Right, he cannot shoot fireballs from his hands or leap 50 feet into the air like the heroes in the old legends. He operates entirely on physics and desperation.
So what does he do?
He goes to the narrowest part of the pass, drops his center of gravity, and wedges the butt of his iron spear into a heavy crevice at the base of a boulder. He turns his own body into a static, physical barricade.
The details of the physical impact here are staggering. When the alpha wolf lunges, Jin doesn't try to, stab it.
No, he couldn't outspeed it anyway.
Right, he just lets the massive beast's own forward momentum do the work. The wolf impales itself on the braced spear, but the kinetic transfer is astronomical.
Huge amount of force.
The text says the impact threatens to instantly dislocate both of Jin's shoulders. And here is where that horrific, abusive training with Zhao actually pays off.
For the microfractures.
Yes. His bones groan under the weight of a beast the size of a horse, but because they have been microfractured and laced with earth key for months, they don't break.
He absorbs an impact that would have liquefied a normal person, literally liquefied them. But surviving the initial strike doesn't mean he's safe.
No, not at all.
He is immediately pinned under the crushing weight of the dying alpha wolf. Its claws are tearing into his chest. Two more dire wolves are scrambling over the corpse of their leader, snapping their jaws, trying to get to Jin's throat.
This scene was so claustrophobic to read.
So intense. His grip on the spear shaft is slipping because it's slick with blood. He's bleeding out, and the sheer mechanical force of the pack is about to break his barricade. And at this exact, desperate moment, the narrative pulls back in a massive way.
I loved this shift.
We are introduced to a completely different perspective. We pan up into the clouds.
Yes, we leave the mud and blood and we meet Mei.
Mei is great.
She is described as a celestial observer, a minor deity, who sits on a silver cloud, literally watching the mortal world through a magical scrying pool. And she is incredibly frustrated.
So annoyed.
Why is she so invested in this random kid in a ditch?
Well, Mei represents a fascinating commentary on the concept of fate and divine intervention in this universe. The text notes that she has watched grand emperors march into battle with thousands of silk banners, and she felt absolutely nothing.
Because it's all predictable.
Exactly. It was all laid out in the ledgers. But watching this solitary, bruised boy refuse to lie down and die, it sparks genuine outrage in her.
She actually cares.
She does. The heavenly overseers have incredibly strict laws against direct interference. She cannot simply throw a lightning bolt and fry the wolves.
That would be too easy.
Right. But she is deeply disgusted by the systemic unfairness of Zhao using his authority to murder a kid. So she decides to bend the bureaucratic rules of heaven.
How does she do that?
She leans over her scrying pool and blows a very soft puff of spiritual wind to give Jin what the text calls a, quote, microscopic statistical anomaly.
I am absolutely obsessed with that phrasing. A statistical anomaly of terrible footing.
It's so good.
She doesn't blow the wolf away with the tornado. She just manipulates probability so that a perfectly ordinary piece of loose gravel catches the second wolf's back paw right in the middle of its lunge.
Just a tiny nudge.
Right. The wolf's trajectory shifts by maybe 3 inches, but at that velocity, 3 inches is everything. Instead of its jaws closing around Jin's head, the wolf's heavy skull collides violently with the solid rock wall of the canyon.
The physics check out.
The sound of the crack echoes, and the beast is knocked out cold.
It is the ultimate butterfly effect. That split second of confusion, That slight delay as the third wolf stumbles over the unconscious second wolf gives Jin the tiny window of time he needs.
What does he do with that window?
He lets go of the ruined spear, drags a jagged piece of loose stone from the dirt, and drives it directly into the third wolf's eye. And because of the narrowness of the pass, it is now choked with a barricade of heavy, bleeding wolf bodies. The rest of the pack cannot get through, and they retreat.
He actually held the pass.
He actually survives the impossible order. But the physical toll on his body is just catastrophic.
The trek back to the outpost is described in a way that literally makes your own muscles ache while you're reading it.
Oh, for sure.
Every single step is a white-hot spike of agony. He's bleeding heavily from the chest wounds. The text says there is a dark, bitter voice in his head, a manifestation of his trauma, asking him, why didn't you just run? If you ran, Zhao would have died. The world would be better off.
And it's a valid question.
It is. But he keeps walking because he remembers his little sister back in the outer villages holding his robe, asking him to bring back stories.
Yeah?
He simply refuses to let her story end with her brother choosing to be weak. So he drags himself, inch by agonizing inch, back to the gates.
And meanwhile, up in the clouds, Mei is practically pacing holes into her silver cloud, yelling at him not to die.
She's so stressed.
Yeah, she's so stressed because she can see something he can't. The direwolves are magical creatures, and their blood and ambient energy are now soaking into Jin's open wounds.
Oh, right.
She realizes that if he doesn't actively circulate the stray, volatile spiritual energy left by the wolves, his heart will simply give out from the chaotic pressure.
But he doesn't know how to do that.
Exactly. Jin has absolutely no idea how to circulate qi properly. He has no training manual, but his sheer obstinate force of will, his refusal to stop moving, naturally acts as a pump, keeping his heart beating.
He finally stumbles into the outpost courtyard, and the timing is so cinematic.
It really is.
He arrives right as Zhao is barking orders at the luggage servants, trying to pack his expensive teas.
The tea.
The visual contrast is striking. You have Zhao in his pristine, unwrinkled silk, sweating from cowardice, and Jin, completely covered in dark wolf blood and his own gore, leaning heavily on a bent, broken spear.
And Jin doesn't even yell at him. No. He doesn't yell. He doesn't try to attack Zhao. He just looks at the coward who sent him to die, spits blood onto the pristine stones, and wheezes, "The pass is blocked."
And how does the system reward this incredible act of heroism?
Does Zhao express gratitude?
Does he recommend Jin for a promotion?
Absolutely not.
Of course not. Zhao's mind immediately goes to self-preservation. He realizes that if a battered outer disciple survived the exact threat that a core disciple ran away from, his cowardice will be exposed to the elders.
He'd be ruined.
His reputation will be ruined. So Zhao does what corrupt bureaucrats do best. He covers it up.
He fakes the paperwork.
He orders the gates locked behind his carriage, falsifies the official sect death ledgers to state that Lu Jin died running away like a coward, and abandons Jin's unconscious body at the edge of the outer mortal villages, assuming his wounds will finish the job.
Okay, so Jin survives the physical meat grinder of the canyon?
Barely.
Barely, yeah. But that just brings up a much darker question. How do you survive the economic meat grinder waiting for you at home?
Right, because the village is brutal.
Because bringing this newly forged, deeply traumatized body back to the crushing reality of his civilian life is an entirely different kind of battlefield.
Exactly. When Jin finally regains consciousness, it's days later. He's lying in his family's drafty, thatched-roof mud hut.
He's made it home.
He's being cared for by his little sister, Xiaoyan, and his aging father, Lu Chang. The text notes that the local village doctor had already told the father to stop wasting money on medicine and prepare a burial shroud.
Basically told him to give up.
But his father refused. Lu Chang stayed up for 3 days straight, boiling cheap, bitter roots to stave off infection and keep his son alive.
When Jin wakes up, he expects to feel the agonizing, fiery pain of shredded flesh. But as he peels back the linen bandages, he realizes the deep claw marks have completely stopped bleeding.
They've healed weirdly.
Yeah, they've scabbed over with an unnaturally thick, dark tissue. But more importantly, there is a sensation deep inside his chest, right in the center of his sternum, where Zhao battered him the hardest for months. There is a strange, dense warmth pulsing.
I love how this is described.
The text describes it beautifully. It is like a cold stone hearth that somehow captured a single, incredibly stubborn ember. What exactly is happening inside his body at this point?
Okay, so we are witnessing the convergence of two distinct, massive physical traumas.
Right.
The stray, feral spiritual energy from the dying wolves, combined with the raw, localized gravity of the earth key that thou hammered into him, didn't dissipate into the atmosphere.
Because the glass pipes are broken.
Exactly. Because his meridians were shattered, his brutalized, microfractured bones acted as a trap. He isn't healing in a traditional biological sense.
Then what is he doing?
His body is actively rebuilding its fundamental architecture out of denser, tougher material. The ember in his chest is a compressed knot of highly volatile energy that his body is using as a new power source.
But Jin knows he doesn't have the luxury of sitting in bed for a 6-month recovery.
No, there's no paid time off here.
Definitely no paid time off. In the outer villages, the economic reality is brutal. An idle mouth is a direct threat to the family's winter rations. If he doesn't work, his sister starves.
It's just constant pressure.
So, a mere 3 days after being dumped at the edge of the village for dead, he limps out to the family's woodcutter's shed. And he has this profound psychological realization.
A huge moment for him.
He looks at his calloused hands and thinks, if the world is going to treat me like a dog, I might as well make sure I'm the kind of dog that bites back when stepped on.
It's a critical turning point for his character.
Mm.
He picks up his family's old, nicked iron axe. His goal is to chop a heavily knotted piece of timber called ironwood.
And ironwood is notoriously tough, right?
Extremely tough. Under normal circumstances, prior to the canyon, bringing down a single ironwood log took him 20 minutes of exhausting, backbreaking labor.
Just for one log.
Right. He raises the heavy axe, draws a breath, and that chaotic knot of energy in his chest, that stubborn ember, suddenly shifts.
What does that feel like?
Well, this energy does not flow smoothly like the elegant glowing key paths described in the Intersect manuals. The text describes it surging forward, quote, like thick mud through a rusted pipe, violently forcing its way into his shoulder muscles.
So he swings the axe down, and the sound it makes isn't a normal chopping sound.
No, it's not a normal thud.
It is a massive thwack. The dull, nicked iron axe shears completely through the massive trunk in a single strike, burying itself 3 inches deep into the solid oak chopping block underneath.
Just unbelievable power.
It sounds like a small thunderclap in the quiet shed. Jin drops the axe and stares at his hands. His joints didn't ache from the impact. In fact, his arms feel heavy, like they're packed with wet, dense sand.
High above, May is watching this through her scrying pool, and she has this proud, almost conspiratorial smile on her face.
She's loving it.
Oh, she's absolutely loving it. With her celestial vision, she can see what the mortal village doctors could not. Jin's internal physical foundation is as ugly, chaotic, and brutal as a pile of scrap iron. But it is incredibly thick.
The scrap iron metaphor is so good.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
She realizes that if this boy can just figure out how to circulate that trapped energy without dying, the arrogant inner disciples are going to have a very difficult time knocking him down.
So she decides to help him again.
Yes, in fact, to help him, she subtly manipulates the environment again. She increases the atmospheric pressure right above his chopping block by a fraction of a percent.
Hey, why?
It forces him to exert twice as much internal force just to lift his arms. She is essentially using the air itself as a resistance band to mold his chaotic energy.
Okay, that's actually genius. And she does this right as trouble arrives at the front gate. Which brings us to a massive, crucial element of the world building in the Path of Embers, the economics of oppression.
Yes, let's get into this.
I really want to spend some time on this because the Iron Fist sect isn't just a martial arts dojo where guys go to learn high kicks on the weekends.
No, they are the government.
Exactly. They are the regional government.
Yeah.
They're a corrupt, magical, feudal system, and they control the entire economy.
Precisely. The power dynamic in this world isn't merely about who punches harder. It is about who controls the raw resources, the food, and the currency.
Who are the tax collectors?
Well, the local magistrate employs these tax collectors who are essentially sanctioned thugs. These men are paid a miserable pittance by the provincial government, and they are expected to make up the difference by squeezing the outer villages dry through arbitrary fees.
So they're just extorting people.
Total extortion. The leader of this particular gang is a man named Gang. Jang is a failed outer disciple who couldn't cut it in the sect, so now he carries a heavy wooden staff wrapped in copper wire to terrorize farmers.
Jen kicks the Liu family's gate open, spits foul-smelling tobacco juice right onto their cleanly swept dirt path, and demands 3 extra sacks of millet or 2 silver taels for the Summer Defense Fund.
Which is completely made up.
Which the reader knows is a complete lie. Jen claims the direwolves breached the pass and the magistrate desperately needs to raise a militia. He's using the exact disaster that Jin stopped to extort Jin's starving
It's
family.
infuriating. It is the pinnacle of extortion wrapped in bureaucratic
It's
language.
so twisted.
It really mirrors predatory taxation in our own history, where lords would invent protection taxes for threats that didn't exist.
Mhm.
When Jin's father, Liu Chang, bravely steps forward and protests, showing his ledger that proves they already paid the summer quota, Chung doesn't care.
He just wants money.
Chang signals his thugs to seize the old man, intending to beat him bloody right there in the dirt as an example to the rest of the village.
But Jin is entirely done playing the victim.
Oh, he's so...
He steps out of the shed and tells Gang in a remarkably calm voice to let his father go. Gang looks at Jin, assumes he's just a crippled, sick kid, and orders one of his thugs to break Jin's left arm with a heavy pine club to teach him respect.
Just a casual arm breaking.
Right. The thug steps up and swings the club with enough force to shatter a seasoned timber beam.
But the sound it makes when it connects with Jin's forearm isn't the sickening crack of breaking bone.
No, it's not.
It is a dull, heavy thud,
Yeah.
like hitting a sack of dense river clay.
And Jin's reaction.
Jin doesn't even flinch. His microfractured bones, hardened by core-level chi and the wolf's kinetic energy, barely register the impact. To a body conditioned by Zhao's localized gravity strikes, a wooden club swung by a mortal thug feels like being hit with a rolled-up newspaper.
Jin doesn't scream. He just looks at the thug, completely deadpan, and flatly asks, "Is that it? You need to put your hip into it like this."
I love that line.
It's so good. He reaches out, grabs the thug's shirt, uses the raw mechanical leverage of his newly dense body, and effortlessly throws a grown man over his shoulders, slamming him into the hard dirt.
The second thug panics and lunges, swinging his club horizontally in a desperate arc aimed straight at Jin's ribs.
And this is where Jin does something crazy.
Yes, Jin makes a fascinating conscious choice right here in the text. He sees the strike coming, and he doesn't dodge.
He just takes it.
He deliberately lets the club strike his side because he wants to test the physical limits of his new frame. The pine wood violently shatters into splinters against his ribs.
And does it hurt?
Instead of pain, Jin feels a tingling warmth. The kinetic force of the thug's blow is instantly sucked in by his greedy, altered skeleton, compressing the volatile wolf ki even further.
This is the massive aha moment for Jin. You can almost see the light bulb go off in his head.
Oh, definitely.
He realizes, wait a minute, the beatings, they aren't just hurting me anymore. They are hammering the energy into place. It's all just extra training.
That mindset shift is everything.
It is. I want you, the listener, to pause and really think about the psychology of that. Have you ever been in a situation where the exact thing you used to fear, the stressor that caused you immense pain, suddenly holds absolutely no power over you because you have thoroughly adapted to it?
It is a profound inversion of the power dynamic.
Completely.
Leader Jin Gang is absolutely terrified. He recognizes that the physics of what just happened make no sense. He screams that Jin is a cultivation demon, drops his expensive copper-wrapped staff in the dirt, and scrambles out of the courtyard like a startled rabbit, dragging his groaning thugs behind him.
Just totally routed them.
The fear of physical violence, which is the only currency the tax collectors have, has been completely neutralized by Jin's trauma.
Jin's father is trembling, looking at his teenage son who just shrugged off a deadly weapon. And Jin just calmly walks over, picks up his axe to finish splitting the timber, and says, "They gave me a very thorough education up on the mountain, Father, and I think it's time I started using it."
What a mic drop line.
It is deeply satisfying. But as analysts of the text, we have to remember the mechanical reality, raw physical strength isn't enough to survive in this world.
No, it's not.
Jin's chaotic internal energy is still a ticking time bomb. He doesn't have a cultivation manual. He doesn't know how to process or vent this energy safely.
Right. If he keeps absorbing kinetic impact without a way to release or refine the internal pressure, the sheer density of the trapped chi will eventually tear his organs apart from the inside.
Which means it is time for the universe to intervene again, leading us directly into the local commercial hub, Blackstone Town.
A very grim place.
Very grim. Because a grown man whose entire job relies on intimidation like Leader Gang does not go around advertising that he got thrashed by a supposedly crippled 18-year-old.
Of course not. He'd be a laughingstock.
Right. Gang marks the Liu family's tax as collected via labor exemption in his corrupt ledger and actively avoids their farm. Fear is a reliable currency, and Zheng doesn't want his bosses knowing he lost his.
So with a temporary reprieve from the tax collectors, Jin travels to Blackstone Town to sell the dried ironwood bark he's been chopping. And the text description of Blackstone Town is a depressing microcosm of the world's extreme inequality.
It's so bleak.
It is a bustling market, but
Yeah.
even the air here isn't free.
This is the breathing tax I mentioned in the intro.
Yes. Low-level town guards patrol the streets and literally charge a spiritual residue tax to old, dying hermits whose unstable meridians might accidentally absorb a stray breath of the town's ambient, refined qi.
I couldn't believe that detail when I read it. Jin is watching this happen, and he thinks to himself, the heavens demand absolute perfection. If your internal glass pipes fall short by an inch, the world turns you into a desperate street vendor and taxes you just for breathing.
It is an incredibly efficient bureaucratic system designed explicitly to crush the spirits of the lower class.
It's working perfectly.
Jin finds a small patch of unclaimed dirt, sets down his heavy wooden crate of bark, and just waits for buyers.
Up above, May is watching this depressing market scene, resting her chin in her hands, muttering to herself about how foolish mortals are.
She's just judging everyone.
She is. She notes how everyone down there is trying so hard to be special, to find a glowing pearl or a magical sword, when they could just be doing what Jin is doing, letting the universe hit them until they turn into iron.
But then her celestial vision picks up something terrifying.
What does she see?
She sees a strange, ancient ripple in the karmic lines around Jin's stall.
The text describes an old, severely hunched mortal woman wearing a patchwork cloak, shuffling down the row of vendors pushing a squeaky small wooden cart.
Just a normal old woman, supposedly.
Right. Most people completely ignore her, stepping over her like she's trash. But May, with her divine sight, sees that this old woman's personal thread of fate is incredibly faint.
Almost transparent.
It is almost transparent. It is the mark of a being who has lived so long she slipped past the regular sight of the local gods.
And the old woman stops her squeaky cart right in front of Jin. She looks at him with milky, half-blind eyes that the text says, quote, smell of old paper and ancient things.
That is such a cool sensory detail.
It is. She points a crooked finger at his crate and tells him she has absolutely no use for wood bark, but that she has a great appreciation for things that refuse to break when the hammer falls.
Jin is deeply cynical at this point. He immediately suspects Zhao sent her as a spy or an assassin in disguise.
He's paranoid, understandably.
But she leans in close and tells him, you carry the weight of a mountain in your bones, boy, but your thread is being pulled by a very clumsy hand from above.
Oh, she calls May out.
She is directly, explicitly calling out May. And the description of May up in the clouds is hilarious. She is absolutely mortified, blushing silver down to her collarbone, realizing an ancient spirit just caught her cheating.
That's amazing. The old woman rummages through the junk in her cart and pulls out what looks like a shriveled, fuzzy gray caterpillar. It's a dried weed.
Just a weed.
She drops it onto Jin's premium stack of bark. She speaks in dense riddles, warning him that the white-silked weasel, obviously referring to Zhao, is spinning a grand coat of paint for a rotten fence.
But it's her mechanical, physical advice that really matters.
Right. She taps his chest and says, a forge needs a bellows, you silly calf. If you just let the boys with the six hit you without blowing the bellows, the charcoal eventually goes cold.
She gives him a very specific, bizarre recipe. She tells him to take the weed, boil it with bitter roots, wash his apron, and most importantly, boil it in wolf fat.
Wolf fat.
And before Jin can throw the weed back at her, she vanishes into the dense crowd, literally disappears.
Just poof.
But when Jin touches the fuzzy weed, a violent static shock cuts straight through his thick fingers, making the stubborn ember of chi in his chest throb and demand to move. He realizes she wasn't crazy.
The white-silked weasel is Zhao.
And Zhao is coming for him.
So Jin takes the strange weed back to the mud hut. His father, Lu Chan, is an experienced farmer, and he recognizes the plant immediately.
What?
It is called cindergrip weed, and according to mortal farming logic, it's considered an entirely useless pest that grows near underground coal seams.
Useless.
Yeah, it makes the goats bloat if they eat it, and the village elders say it is worthless for medicine because it doesn't dissolve in water. It stays as hard as stone unless it is boiled in vinegar and raw wolf fat.
Here is where the gritty reality of his situation gets really interesting. Jin realizes they actually have a jar of wolf fat left over from their winter stores.
So it's just foul.
His father is absolutely horrified by the idea. Wolf fat isn't food. It is what they use to grease the wooden wagon axles so the wheels don't rot in the freezing rain.
It's literal axle grease.
It's a foul-smelling, congealing gray sludge. But Jin's face is deadpan. He hands the jar to his dad and tells him to boil it with the weed.
The thematic contrast the author creates here is brilliant.
How so?
Where you have the wealthy inner disciples of the Iron Fist sect up on the mountain, sipping fragrant, spiritually refined morning dew lotus tea from porcelain cups to gently cleanse their pristine souls.
Very elegant.
And down in the dirt, our protagonist is staring at a bubbling iron pot of literal weaponized axle grease and bitter roots.
The ultimate contrast.
It perfectly encapsulates the story's core view of purity versus survival. Purity is a luxury afforded only to the privileged. Survival for the marginalized requires swallowing the most bitter, repulsive, toxic elements of the world and forcing them to work for you.
Jin literally looks at the sludge and thinks to himself, at this point, axle grease might actually be an upgrade for my insides.
His sense of humor is so dry.
So he takes the wooden bowl of this stinking, swirling black ink. Up in the clouds, May is practically chewing her celestial fingernails, whispering rapid-fire chemical instructions he can't hear.
She's backseat driving his alchemy.
Exactly. She knows that the highly localized beast fat is the only acidic catalyst strong enough to dissolve the calcified outer husk of this subterranean spirit plant.
He lifts the bowl and swallows it in 3 massive, agonizing gulps.
I can't even imagine the taste.
It's awful. For a terrifying second, nothing happens. Then, a column of white-hot liquid fire erupts in his throat.
Oh, God.
The volatile heat tears outward toward his skeleton. We are seeing a massive chemical reaction. The chaotic wolf key already inside him, combined with the residual gravity energy from Zhao's beatings, violently reacts to the raw, subterranean heat of the dissolved cindergrip weed.
It sounds like his chest is going to just explode.
It feels like it to him.
But Jin remembers the old woman's cryptic words, below the bellows. Instead of screaming and thrashing on the floor, he forces his diaphragm down and his lungs to expand.
He breathes.
He draws a massive, ragged breath of cool night air through his nose, and the cold air acts exactly like a blast of oxygen on a dying blacksmith's fire. The volatile heat inside his chest doesn't explode outward, it compresses inward.
We need to unpack the mechanical thermodynamics of the bellows breath because it is the foundation of his entire power set.
Okay, lay it on me.
It uses the human respiratory system to act as both a pressure valve and a physical forge. By inhaling the cold air, he creates a temperature differential that melts the jagged, calcified blockages in his ruined pathways.
His skin physically transforms here, right?
It does, turning a heavy, dull charcoal hue, the exact color of raw iron cooling under a blacksmith's hammer. He exhales, and a thin wisp of dark, foul-smelling gray sulfur smoke escapes his lips.
Like actual smoke.
Actual smoke. This smoke is his body physically expelling the necrotic impurities of his old, broken frame.
The searing pain recedes, and the text says it is replaced by a deep, throbbing, heavy resonance. He feels like a granite boulder anchored deep into the bedrock.
He's incredibly solid now.
His raw, peeling skin heals into smooth, abnormally solid flesh. He wipes his mouth, looks at the empty bowl of axle grease, and rasps, "Well, that was completely miserable. Let's never do that again."
I love that. With his body truly tempered and his chaotic internal energy finally stabilized and compressed by the bellows breath, Jin is physically ready to work.
But the universe isn't done testing him.
Unfortunately, no. Because while Jin is surviving axle grease 5 miles away, senior disciple Zhao receives a heavily sanitized, panicked report from Leader Gang.
Uh-oh.
The core message of the report cuts to the bureaucracy. Lu Jin is not dead. He is walking around, and his bones are ringing like solid iron.
And Zhao is furious. We get a scene in his office where his pristine white silks rustle aggressively as his core-level key unconsciously scorches the polished wood of his desk.
He's terrified.
He knows that if an internal auditor or an elder notices a supposedly dead outer disciple with an undocumented functional iron frame living openly in the outer villages, the falsified death ledger will be investigated.
And he'd be found out for running away.
And Zhao will be executed for cowardly desertion. So Zhao realizes he cannot just send a thug to beat Jin up.
Too risky.
He shifts the battlefield. He moves entirely from physical violence to bureaucratic assassination.
The bureaucratic assassination is a terrifying concept, and it is executed flawlessly here. Zhao doesn't send ninjas with poison daggers in the night. That would have evidence. Instead, he uses the ledgers, the quotas, and the unfeeling laws of the sect to execute people cleanly, making it look like a tragic legal failure on the part of the victim. He drafts an official order with his seal and sends it down to the overseer of the local ironwood logging camp.
The Ironwood logging camp is described as this miserable, damp place located in a jagged, sunless ravine. Ironwood bark is as thick as cured leather, and the heartwood is so dense it can dull a sharpened steel axe in a dozen strikes.
It's awful work.
Usually it takes 3 grown men working a two-man saw for hours just to bring down one medium-sized tree. When Jin arrives at dawn for his mandatory labor shift, carrying his father's dull axe, Overseer Bao is waiting for him.
Bao is just as corrupt as Zhao.
Bao is a cruel, sweating man in a grease-stained vest, flanked by 3 low-level sect enforcers who are casually carrying heavy iron-shod clubs.
Bao unrolls a scroll and loudly announces to the camp that a clerical error occurred in the regional ledger.
Ah, clerical error. How convenient.
The Liu family's autumn logging quota has been mysteriously doubled. Jin is ordered to harvest 20 logs of prime ironwood by dusk, or the magistrate will legally seize his family's farm for breach of contract, leaving his father and sister to freeze in the winter.
20 logs.
For context, a standard crew of 5 men struggles to cut 10 logs in a full day. It is an explicitly impossible task designed to justify legal eviction and starvation.
Jin sees right through the bureaucratic veil. He doesn't scream about injustice. He just looks at Bao and thinks, if you're going to try and kill a man with hard labor, at least make the numbers believable.
He's so pragmatic.
He doesn't argue because arguing with a ledger is pointless. He walks straight past them into the thickest, darkest part of the timber. Up in the clouds, Mei is furious.
She hates the cheating.
She is pacing so hard, her silver robes are snapping like flags in a hurricane. She hates that Zhao is hiding behind the law to starve a family.
But before Mei can throw a divine tantrum and intervene, she stops and sees what Jin is doing. He isn't swinging wildly in a panic.
No.
He stops in front of a massive ancient ironwood tree. He closes his eyes, grounds his feet into the mud, and uses the bellows breath.
The new breathing technique.
He deliberately inhales the cool, damp forest air, stoking that dense coal ember of qi hidden deep behind his ribs. His muscles compress and tighten until they feel as solid as the wood standing in front of him.
He exhales a puff of that gray sulfur smoke, tightens his grip on the axe handle, and swings the room.
It's not a thwack anymore.
It doesn't sound like chopping wood at all. The text says it sounds like a heavy, metallic boom echoing out of a cannon. The dull iron blade of the axe shears 12 inches deep into the stone-hard heartwood.
Just massive power.
And the massive kinetic shockwave that bounces back up the wooden handle, his mundane iron frame, greedily swallows it whole.
Exactly. We see him take the tool of his punishment and turn it into a high-intensity training montage. Every single strike he makes against the ironwood sends violent kinetic vibration back up his arms and into his chest pathways. This vibration fuels the internal fire, hammering the wolf key and the axle grease alchemy even tighter into his skeleton.
By mid-afternoon, the clearing looks like a war zone. 19 massive ironwood logs are neatly stacked.
Incredible.
Jin is utterly exhausted, his skin is as dark as weathered iron, but his breathing is perfectly mechanically synchronous with the bellows acting in his chest.
Overseer Bao and the 3 enforcers walk into the clearing, expecting to find Jin crying or collapsed. Instead, Bao is thrown into a sheer panic.
Because Jin actually did it.
If Jin actually fulfills this impossible quota, the ledger will be balanced, and Zhao will have Bao's head for failing to eliminate the problem.
So what does a corrupt bureaucrat do when the victim beats the rig system?
He changes the rules again on the spot.
Of course he does.
Bao stammers, sweating profusely, claiming that the ledger actually had another error. It's 30 logs now.
Unbelievable.
And furthermore, the 19 logs Jin just cut don't count, because the cuts are supposedly too rough and damage the spiritual grain of wood. He orders the enforcers to step in and confiscate Jin's tools.
The 3 enforcers surround Jin. They draw their iron-shod clubs, which are visibly coated in a swirling, muddy gray aura of low-level qi.
These are real weapons.
The leader of the enforcers steps forward and swings for a crushing downward strike aimed directly at Jin's collarbone. And again, repeating the pattern of his resilience, Jin doesn't try to dodge.
He just takes it.
He steps into the strike, bracing his left forearm like a shield. The sound is described as being like a sledgehammer hitting a solid counterweight.
The club doesn't break Jin's arm. It doesn't even bruise him.
Not a scratch.
The muddy gray key on the enforcer's weapon shatters upon impact, like cheap glass hitting a brick wall. The rebound force generated by striking Jin's dense frame is so violent that the enforcer's fingers split completely open, and his wrist snaps backward with a loud, sickening crack. The enforcer drops the club and falls into the dirt, shrieking in agony. The other two enforcers freeze in absolute terror.
Now, here's a deeply important narrative detail. May intervenes again.
She's had enough.
She decides she has had absolutely enough of this fraudulent ledger manipulation. But the text establishes that fate is a fluid, reactive thing. When mortals use corrupt, systemic lies to alter someone's destiny thread, the universe creates natural, invisible back pressure.
Right, like karma building up.
May doesn't create magic out of nowhere. She just gives that existing back pressure a tiny, vindictive, divine nudge.
She decides to give them a real clerical error.
I loved this part.
High above the ravine, there is a massive, dead ironwood tree that has been rotting on the edge of the cliff for decades. May causes a localized shift in atmospheric weight.
Just a little shift.
The dead roots finally snap. A boulder the size of a hay wagon comes hurtling down the side of the cliff, picking up terrifying speed.
Guided by the chaotic, spiteful mathematics of an annoyed spirit, the boulder strikes the muddy path directly between the two remaining enforcers.
Ooh.
The kinetic blast wave blows all three of the thugs backward into a thick patch of stinging, toxic briars. Overseer Bao screams, tries to run away, trips over the very logs he just claimed were too rough, and slides face first into a deep pit of stagnant mule manure, completely shattering his own portable tea table with his forehead.
I laughed out loud reading that. But it brings up a serious question I had while reading.
What's that?
If May keeps intervening with boulders and loose gravel, does it rob Jin of his agency as a protagonist? Is he just getting incredibly lucky and the gods are doing all the real work?
That is a crucial, critical question, but I would argue strongly that it does not rob him of agency.
Why is that?
Let's look at the mechanics of her interventions. May only ever counters the artificial corruption generated by Zhao's abuse of power.
Okay, I see.
Zhao used systemic authority to create an impossible situation. May drops a boulder to remove the enforcers who were actively breaking their own legal rules to assault a laborer. She merely levels the playing field so that Jin's genuine grueling effort actually matters.
That makes perfect sense. She is auditing the auditors.
Exactly. Jin did the excruciating physical work of cutting those 19 logs. May just handled the bureaucratic cheating so he could submit his work.
Jin just walks over to where Bao is groaning in the manure, tosses his leather coin pouch onto Bao's chest, and calmly says, "There are 20 prime logs. Mark the regional ledger as paid. My axe is getting a little dull, and I need the practice anyway."
And he just walks away.
He is an absolute unit of a character.
But as he walks away from the ruined camp, heading back to town, he stumbles into a confrontation that reveals a massive piece of lore.
We finally learn the history.
We finally learn why his bizarre body modifications are actually deeply rooted in the sex-erased history.
Yes. On the muddy road back to town, Jin hears the sharp, cracking sound of a defensive jade talisman snapping. He looks through the weeping ghost willows and sees 3 mid-tier disciples, bullies from the martial hall, shaking down a young woman.
And his first thought is so funny.
His first internal thought is highly pragmatic, which fits his character perfectly.
Yeah.
Someone else's trouble is an excellent reason to keep walking. Drama doesn't pay for millet.
I love how pragmatic he is. He is not trying to be a shining knight in armor. He just wants to survive. But he recognizes the girl.
Who is she?
Her name is Tang Ling. She is a scribe from the archive division. And Jin remembers her because she is the one who used to secretly leave small jars of expensive salt salve on the courtyard stones for him after Zhao's brutal beatings.
Oh, that's sweet.
Well, not out of overwhelming pity, but purely because she hated messy bookkeeping, and a dead sandbag meant she had to fill out 3 hours of extra death certificate paperwork.
Oh, well, still. Tang Ling is an incredibly compelling character. She is essentially a rogue accountant in a world of magical jocks.
Rogue accountant.
She was born with extremely narrow, brittle spiritual channels. If she tries to draw ambient chi to fight like a normal cultivator, her channels physically fray and bleed. She cannot cultivate normally.
So how does she survive?
To survive in a world that values raw power, she relies entirely on hyper-intellectual structural math and complex ink scripts.
Jin drops his heavy wood harness and steps into the clearing. The bullies laugh at him and tell him they'll break his knees for interfering.
What idea?
Very bad idea. 2 of them lunge forward, swinging heavy iron-rimmed boots directly at his kneecaps. Jin doesn't even bother to raise his hands.
He just stands there.
He just uses the bellows breath, anchoring his heels deeply into the bedrock beneath the mud. Bang, bang, anything. The kicks land cleanly against his bare shins.
And just like with the wooden club in the village, the kinetic force completely fails to break his bones.
What happens to the force?
His dense skeleton swallows the impact, converts it to raw internal heat, and the rebound pressure shoots straight back into the thug's legs. Their own ankle bones violently splintered under the weight of their returned force.
Instant karma.
The leader of the bullies screams that Jin's meridians are dead and flees in terror, dragging his crippled friends.
Jin calmly walks over and pops Tang Ling's dislocated shoulder back into place. And Tang Ling just stares at his soot-gray skin and his heavy breathing.
She knows what's going on.
She works in the archives, so she knows Zhao lied on the official death ledgers. But more importantly, she recognizes exactly what physical technique Jin is unknowingly using.
She tells him she's been secretly digging into the foundational decaying logs from the sect's opening century.
This is the massive historical revelation of the text. The first patriarch of the Iron Fist sect, the man who founded the entire empire, was not an elegant nobleman born with a glowing, pure soul.
No, not at all.
He was a common, illiterate blacksmith who had absolutely zero spiritual roots. He created a method called the Ashen Core.
The Ashen Core.
Because his meridians couldn't hold elegant energy, he used raw, brutal external trauma to hammer ambient force directly into his skeleton, using his lungs as a bellows to compress the heat. He forged himself exactly like Jin is doing.
The thematic parallels here are stunning. Jin and Tang Ling are two sides of the exact same marginalized coin.
How so?
Jin represents extreme physical endurance without magical privilege. Tang Ling represents extreme intellectual precision without magical privilege. Both are treated as disposable by the system, and both realize they can use the system's own forgotten foundational tools against it.
They complement each other perfectly.
But over the centuries, the elite, wealthy class of the sect systematically buried this gritty working-class foundation. They erased the blacksmith from the history books.
Why would they do that?
They replaced his legacy with poems about elegant silk and refined jade because it fit their aristocratic narrative of genetic superiority better.
Typical.
Tang Ling has the scribbled, decaying notes on the original bellows breath formulas, but she needed a living subject to see if the ancient text was actually accurate.
Tang Ling gives him 3 handwritten pages of her translated research. She tells him she needs him to survive the week because she knows what Zhao is planning.
Zhao is not giving up.
The Grand Harvest Festival is approaching, and Zhao is using his authority to set up a public execution disguised as a mandatory strength evaluation. This leads us directly into the incredible climax of the story.
The night before the festival, Jin's uncle, Fatty Lu, runs to their hut bringing terrible news. The Fect isn't using the standard wooden measuring pillars for the strength evaluation this year.
What are they using?
Zhao pulled strings and brought down the earth sieve from the inner mountain.
The earth sieve is described as a 3,000-pound block of raw subterranean black granite.
3,000 pounds.
It requires 10 grown men and a team of mules just to drag it into the village square. And Zhao publicly decrees that any outer village boy of age who cannot lift the stone 4 inches off the ground fails the tribute, and their family's land is immediately forfeit to the sect.
It is a highly legal, highly visible purge designed to clear out the terrace before winter and ensure Jin is publicly crushed.
And the mechanics of the trap are even worse. As Uncle Lu points out, the stone doesn't just run on physical weight, it is enchanted.
All right, it runs on spiritual weight.
If you try to lift it with just the muscles in your back, the magical gravity will snap your spine in half.
It's a death trap.
Meanwhile, back at the sect, in the freezing, mold-scented basement of the archives, Tang Ling is preparing her part of the counterattack against Zhao.
She is sitting in the dark, using her brittle, agonizing spiritual channels to carefully trace a 3-stroke ancient ink character for the word more onto a piece of cheap hemp leaf paper.
And she's in pain doing this.
The text says channeling her energy feels like hot vinegar flowing through cracked glass. But she pushes through the pain and binds her weak magic into the paper. Stroke 1 is the anchor, stroke 2 is the seam, stroke 3 is the blot. The paper physically alters, becoming dull and heavy like wet leather.
Tang Ling knows bureaucracy. She knows that Zhao has hired a specialized brute named Iron Grip Deng from the Marshall Hall.
Deng is bad news.
Deng's job is to publicly challenge Jin to a form alignment test before Jin is even allowed to touch the stone. Deng will use his heavy, low-grade earth key to rupture Jin's internal organs under the legal guise of an evaluation.
But Tangling is ready for him.
But Tangling's structural math has meticulously mapped out a 2-inch gap in Deng's left hip, where his posture slightly sags during a downward strike.
So we fast forward to the village square the next morning. The atmosphere is tense. The earth sieve is sitting in the dirt like a massive black tombstone. The crowd of villagers is terrified.
And Zhao is just chilling.
Zhao is sitting up on his raised wooden dais under a pristine white silk canopy, casually sipping pear tea. Deng is standing by the stone, loudly mocking Jin, assuming the coward ran away.
But he didn't run.
But then the crowd parts and Jin walks through. He isn't wearing a martial arts uniform. Just a patched farmer's tunic, his father's dull axe resting over his shoulder, and forearms that look like weathered oak.
Jin steps into the evaluation ring. And exactly as Tangling predicted, Iron Grip Deng immediately steps in his way, aggressively claiming he needs to test Jin's form alignment to ensure a cripple doesn't shatter sect property with bad posture.
Which makes no sense.
It is a blatant, ridiculous lie, but the corrupt enforcers nod and allow it. Deng channels a massive amount of earth ki, raising a glowing yellow fist that the text says feels as heavy and suffocating as a collapsing mine shaft.
This is where the incredible multi-layered teamwork kicks in. It is like watching a heist movie.
It really is.
Tangling is hiding in the shadows of the third row of the crowd. She doesn't use grand, flashy martial gestures. She simply reaches into her robe and presses her ink-stained thumb firmly against the edge of the folded hemp sheet she prepared.
She activates the script.
The structural math activates.
As Deng violently shifts his weight forward to deliver the crushing strike, his left hip suddenly drops by exactly 2 inches.
The 2-inch gap she calculated.
The glowing yellow earth key swirling around his thigh wavers, turning thin and crooked. It is a single, fatal smudge in his posture, created entirely by the localized gravity of Tangling's Moore script pulling on his joint.
And Jin. Jin watches the fist coming and he doesn't dodge. He draws a massive breath, locks his jaw, and stokes the black forge behind his ribs.
The impact.
Deng's massive glowing fist slams directly into Jin's shoulder. The sound echoes across the square, and the silence that follows is suffocating.
What does Zhao do?
Zhao's teacup literally hovers an inch from his lips, frozen in shock. Because Jin doesn't break. He doesn't even take a step back.
Deng panics and tries to pull his fist back, but his knuckles are sinking into Jin's shoulder muscle. Jin's charcoal-hued skin has become an iron vice.
He's stuck.
The intense kinetic back pressure of Deng's earth key is trapped inside Jin's dense skeleton, filling his internal hollows with a white-hot, sulfurous heat. Jin's microfractures instantly weld together under the pressure. He turns his entire skeleton into a singular, unyielding block of cold iron.
Jin exhales a stream of gray sulfur smoke, hot enough to scorch the grass at his feet. Then, he simply twists his torso.
Using Deng's own flaw against him.
Using the exact structural flaw that Tangling exposed with her math, Jin's shoulder acts as an immovable fulcrum. Deng's heavily unbalanced momentum is violently redirected. The brute's own heavy earth key tears through his unstable hip joint, ripping the ligaments.
Deng collapses.
Deng collapses into the mud, screaming, entirely crippled by his own force.
The crowd of villagers backs away in primitive fear. A common laborer in a patched tunic just dismantled a Marshall Hall proctor without swinging a single fist.
It's unheard of.
Up in the mist, May is watching in absolute awe. She whispers, "He thought he could cross a life off his ledger with a stroke of a brush. He doesn't know what happens when the mountain meets an anvil."
But the climax isn't over. Jin steps over Deng's body and walks up to the earth sieve.
The stone.
Zhao is panicked, his face pale, but he tries to maintain control of the narrative, loudly stating the legal tribute requirement still stands. Lift the 3,000-pound granite block 4 inches, or the land returns to the mountain.
Jin places his calloused hands on the cold stone, and up above, May's divine sight peers deeper, and she realizes in horror that the stone isn't just physically heavy.
What did Zhao do?
Zhao's faction secretly carved an advanced Earth affinity script into the base, magically anchoring it to the mountain's deep roots. Jin isn't just trying to lift a rock, he is trying to physically rip a piece of the mountain's spine out of the bedrock.
Jin inhales. He forces all the suffocating panic, all the trauma, and the white-hot heat he just swallowed from Deng's strike straight down into the marrow of his legs.
Channeling everything.
His internal microfractures glow with an unseen crimson heat. He treats his physical frame like a single solid iron casting. He grips the chisel marks on the stone, straightens his hips, and pulls.
Grindy.
A subterranean groan ripples through the entire square. The dirt around the stone visibly buckles.
The massive block actually begins to rise. Zhao snaps. He completely loses his composure.
He realizes he's losing.
He realizes Jin is actually going to do it and humiliate him publicly, so he barks a desperate command for the enforcers to rush in and cut Jin's canvas lifting harness, falsely claiming Jin is using illegal weights in his boots.
Which is such a desperate lie.
The enforcers draw bronze daggers and lunge at Jin's back while he is vulnerable.
And here's the final, beautiful piece of the alliance. Mei is absolutely furious at this blatant, cowardly cheating. She leans far over her scrying pool, closes her eyes, and exhales a single freezing cold breath of pure starlight.
The cosmic nudge.
Down in the mortal square, a sharp, unnatural gust of wind kicks up a blinding flurry of dry chaff and ash right into the enforcers' faces.
The first enforcer blinks, blinded, and slices his dagger wide into the empty air. The second enforcer's boot catches on a slick, greasy paper food wrapper that just happens to blow across the paving stones at that exact millisecond, and he face plants hard into the dirt.
It's perfect.
That 3-second delay is all the time Jin needs.
Jin heaves with everything he has. The granite block rips free from his magical roots with a deafening, explosive crack.
He actually lifts it.
He locks his knees, holds the 3,000-pound stone waist-high for 3 full breaths, so every single person in the square can clearly see the space between the granite and the dirt, and then he just lets go.
The impact must have been massive.
It crashes back into the earth, burying itself 6 inches deep and shaking the physical foundations of the village.
This sequence is magnificent because it isn't just a strong guy lifting a heavy rock.
Right, so much more than that.
It is a peasant leveraging raw, agonizing labor, an archivist utilizing rogue mathematics to expose structural flaws, and a minor god subtly balancing probability, all cooperating to break a rigged casino.
I really want you to think about that dynamic. Think about the power of hidden alliances in your own life. When a corporate or social system is structurally designed from the top down to make you fail, raw individual effort often isn't enough to break it.
You can't do it alone.
It requires the archivist who knows the hidden loopholes, the laborer who bears the physical weight, and sometimes just a little bit of atmospheric luck to counter the corruption. Jin calmly picks up his axe, tosses his few copper coins onto Zhao's table, and loudly declares his tribute paid.
Which brings us to the chilling, highly consequential aftermath of his victory. The crowd is dead silent. Zhao's pristine white silk canopy has collapsed and is being trampled in the mud.
The visual of that is so good.
Zhao slowly pours his ash-covered pear tea onto the stones. His face is described as a mask of frozen porcelain. The village headman nervously stammers that, according to the ledger, the tribute is legally satisfied.
And Zhao drops a terrifyingly quiet whisper that gave me goosebumps. For now, bookkeeping errors occur, headman. A wise clerk simply waits for the next audit.
The next audit.
Zhao realizes he cannot beat Jin within the established rules of the ledger, so he decides to completely discard the ledger.
Zhao walks away to the courier post and pulls out a red-bordered parchment. This color signifies a high-priority internal appeal to the Vice Hall Chief of the Inner Mountain.
He's escalating it.
He writes that subject Lu Jin demonstrates dangerous symptoms of forbidden external compression techniques. He notes that standard enforcers are insufficient to handle the threat.
Which is true, they aren't.
Right. He officially requests an inner peak overseer for a winter liquidation, entirely under the legal pretext of a martial heresy audit.
He ties the red parchment to a black stormhawk and sends it flying into the high peaks. This is the terrifying reality of defeating a corrupt system.
They never just give up.
When you beat them at their own rigged game, they don't concede. They don't applaud your merit or give you a medal. They simply change the rules, escalate the violence, and label you a heretic to justify your execution.
Tang Ling, watching the hawk fly away from the shadows of the weeping willows, senses this massive shift in the world's politics.
She knows what it means.
She looks down at her torn, ink-stained scripts and whispers, "The traditional brush rules are broken. The external path is functional. He is the iron, and I am the ink. The winter page is open."
And up in the clouds, Mei is looking down at her own glowing hands. The destiny lines of the Eastern Terrace didn't just bend around Jin, they violently sheared off their predetermined tracks.
The ledger of fate is ruined.
The neat, orderly ledger of fate has been replaced by a jagged, unpredictable streak of crimson fire. She looks at the tiny speck of Jin walking back to his farm and realizes the grim truth. You survived the sieve, little mortal, But you just spat on the ledger of a core faction, they won't send an enforcer next time, they'll send a butcher.
It is a phenomenal cliffhanger. So, to summarize Jin's journey through these first 12 chapters, we've watched him transform from a battered, disposable sandbag into an immovable anvil.
The text provides a profoundly gritty perspective on where power truly comes from.
It really does.
True strength in this world doesn't always come from pristine, inherited magic or elegant lotus flowers. Sometimes it comes from swallowing the bitter root, drinking the toxic axle grease, surviving the hammer blows, and forging your own iron in the dark when no one else is looking.
It is an incredible testament to human resilience. Jin proved his worth, he reclaimed his dignity, and he forged an indestructible body. But in doing so, he made himself a target for the entire military-industrial complex of the Inner Mountain.
He is a massive threat now.
He is no longer just a nuisance. He is an existential threat to their narrative of aristocratic superiority. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, looking at the bigger picture of this universe.
We have spent a lot of time talking about Jin fighting the corrupt bureaucracy of the Iron Fist sect. But consider May, the celestial observer up in the clouds.
The one who kept nudging the rocks.
Right. If the minor gods of this universe are willing to subtly rig the system from above, dropping boulders and shifting gravel just to spite a middle manager like Zhao, it makes you wonder about the nature of divine justice.
That's a point.
Is true justice actually a pure divine force? Or are the gods just playing their own corrupt, petty political games on a slightly higher cloud, treating mortal lives like chips in a celestial casino?
That is a fascinating question that reframes the entire story. If the heavens are just as petty as the middle managers on Earth, then maybe the only true power is the iron you forge yourself. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the ledgers in your own lives, keep blowing the bellows when the heat gets too high, and remember, sometimes the muddy, toxic waters are exactly where you forge the strongest iron.